Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hey everyone, hello, it's Susan Coffin. I'm here today for Attitude Magazine. It is our weekly ADHD Experts webinar broadcast, and we're really pleased today to welcome two of ADHD's most esteemed experts, Drs. Ned Hallowell and John Ratey, to talk about a new topic, or one that's pretty much overlooked, which is the euphoria and the energy of ADHD. This is something that receives much less attention than its counterpart on the emotional sort of downside, which is the extreme sensitivity to perceived rejection or failure. That rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD, has been very well documented, but to date, the opposite, the soaring peaks of positivity, the euphoria that results from encouragement, from praise, from approval, has pretty largely been overlooked. Dr. Hallowell describes this as our great friend, our ally, and our tool for growth and productivity. He calls it Recognition Responsive Euphoria, or RRE. So today, Drs. Hallowell and Ratey will talk about how to work up to your potential by tapping into the power of praise and RRE. So thank you both so much for being here. We are always grateful. And I want to introduce them. They probably need no introduction, but let me go ahead and introduce Dr. Ned Hallowell. He's a child and adult psychiatrist. He's a leading authority in the field of ADHD, the host of Distraction, a weekly podcast for thriving in this crazy busy world. He is the founder of the Hallowell Centers in Boston, New York, San Francisco, and Seattle, and the author of books which have really changed the ADHD landscape over the years. You can learn more about him at www.drhallowell.com. And his colleague, Dr. John Ratey, is Associate Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School, also an internationally recognized expert in neuropsychiatry. He's published more than 60 peer-reviewed articles and 11 books, including with Dr. Hallowell, Driven to Distraction. You may have heard Dr. Ratey speak in the past on the power of exercise. He's the author of Spark, the revolutionary new science of exercise in the brain. And he's really established himself as one of the world's authorities on the brain-fitness connection. So thank you both so much for being here today. I also want to thank our sponsor, Play Attention. Play Attention uses NASA-inspired technology to strengthen executive function and self-regulation. Learn how you can make your ADHD a superpower. You can empower yourself or your child at school, work, and in life with Play Attention. And now's the time to start for the new year. Click here for a free consultation or call 800-788-6786, www.playattention.com. Play Attention is offering listeners a special offer. If you mention Attitude Mag 1121, you'll receive 10% off either a home or professional program, as well as a free ADHD assessment. So we thank our sponsors and Play Attention so much for supporting these webinars. We are so happy to be able to make them available at no cost to anyone. So thank you, Play Attention, and to our speakers. Before we start, let me just give you an outline of how this proceeds. At the end of the webinar, a post-event survey will pop up, and it will ask you questions about the webinar. We hope that you will answer those questions. It will be followed by 3 questions that have a title called Required for Certificate of Attendance. If you would like a certificate of attendance emailed to you, then you must answer those 3 questions, the second set of 3 questions. If you're listening to this on replay, please visit the replay page on Attitude's website for further instructions on how to receive a certificate of attendance. Finally, let me point out that if you're having any audio problems, they're probably due to your internal bandwidth. Close any open browsers, maximize your internet speed, and Drs. Hallowell and Ratey will present their slides, after which we'll be happy to take your questions. So let me turn it over to them with our huge thanks for today.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. For Ned and I to get together, it's a big plus. Anyway, we're publishing a brand new book next year 2020, and its title is not settled, as usual in the publishing game, but it has a working title of From ADHD to VAST. And we're excited about the new book. It contains new information and a new way to conceptualize ADHD and also VAST. And we settled on the term VAST as it stands for Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. We wanted to decriminalize or medicalize the ADHD for people, because VAST as a trait goes across many, many people who have it, and a lot of them don't have the stigmata of a diagnosis, a disorder attached to it. We wanted to really get away from that whole mindset, and we know that VAST can be a huge asset, or it can become a crippling trait. And in our book and in our lives, we focus on how to prevent people from getting into the crippling trait side and hopefully promote the huge asset side of the VAST. As we know, this whole presentation is really built on the VAST brain that is very sensitive to rejection and also can thrive on recognition or encouragement. Ned?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, it's high time to break away from the deficit disorder model, which has served us well. It's better than its predecessor, minimal brain dysfunction, but we need now to broaden it out to include the positives. So calling it a deficit disorder, it places it entirely in the realm of pathology, which it should not entirely be. Yes, it can be crippling, terrible. The prison population is full of people with undiagnosed and untreated, as is the halls of the addicted, the unemployed, the marginalized, the depressed. But so also are the halls of the most successful entrepreneurs you'll ever find, the most creative people, the inventors, you go to the top of any field and you'll find people who have this trait. So we wanted to balance it and call it variable attention stimulus trait, rather than this mouthful of pathology, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, we don't expect the DSM to adopt our change, but we offer it to people who have the condition as a much more accurate, not to mention palatable term. Deficit disorder is just not accurate. It's not a deficit of attention at all. It's an abundance of attention. The problem is in controlling it. So the search for stimulation, which is always a central part of it, is not altogether bad either. Yes, the stimulation you seek can be dangerous and addictive and crippling and even lethal, but so also can it be absolutely what powers you to the top. Part of the condition is the drive to create and build and develop, and most entrepreneurs have this. So expanding it in not in the name of soft pedaling, but in the name of accuracy, of full description, getting it out of the realm entirely of pathology and into the realm of where you see a trait. It's a good or a bad thing depending upon how you manage it and how you use it. And in today's webinar, we want to highlight one pair of, and by the way, in this condition, there's pairs, always pairs. You can hyper-focus and then you can't focus. You're distractible, but you're also curious. These flip sides, pairs of opposites, and the one that we're focusing on today, William Dodson has done a great job of letting people know about rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, which people with ADD or VAST are particularly prone to. But we're saying not only, but we're also prone to what we're calling recognition responsive euphoria, RRE. And I think if we go to the next slide, we can begin to get into that a little bit.
Right. So people with VAST are often embarrassed to ask for encouragement. So supporters have to offer it. In our book, we have a chapter on stellar environments, environments that VAST people would do very well in, to have the right environment to provide the encouragement and the recognition that they so really need to get into that positive growth mindset. And it involves surrounding yourself with positive people, asking people to be encouraging rather than discouraging, knowing that many people with VAST are pummeled throughout their lives with shame and humiliation, and we need to offset that and help the environment, help the person with this trait. And there's such a tendency to say disorder, but it's not. It's a trait, and we need to get people to respond appropriately to help people get on the right positive horse, if you will, rather than going negative and feeling shame and humiliation, which leads to the RSD or Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. And we really focus on how important this is to help turn the tables, if you will. And in our new book, there's a number of incredibly poignant cases as to what happens when you make that switch. So, anything more, Ned, or do we go on?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Again, we're not saying that VAST can't be crippling. It can be a terrible disorder, but we're just calling attention to the fact that it can also be a tremendous asset. And John and I are in the business of trying to turn it into far more of an asset than a liability. So it's sort of how you manage it, and we've come up with, over the many years we've been working with people who have it, we've come up with lots of different ways of turning it into an asset. And right at the top of the list is, what I say, cultivate lilies and get rid of leeches. Leeches are people or projects that just aren't worth it. And, you need to get rid of them. On the other hand, lilies are people or projects that are worth it. They maybe take a whole lot of work, like raising a child is a lily, a whole lot of work, but it's worth it. Whereas, a colleague or a job that's nothing but a pain in your back, you probably want to get rid of that. And we often who have this condition stick with leeches, and because we think we should, or because of inertia, we feel guilty, what have you. Try to get past that, and just, if you get rid of one leech, you have no idea how much more energy you'll have, because that leech is sucking on you even when you're not with the person or working on the project. And that's part of being able to tap into the recognition responsive euphoria, is clearing the path, getting rid of the people who are chronically, or the projects who are chronically disappointing you, rejecting you, getting in your way, putting you in those terrible negative places that make it so much more difficult to experience the high that Susan talked about at the beginning, the euphoria that really is very much a part of VAST. We have these pools of euphoria, not just pools of dysphoria, but in order to tap into them, you want to get rid of as much as you possibly can the obstacles that you can get rid of, the leeches is what I call them, and people or projects that bring you down, that disappoint you chronically, predictably, habitually, and you keep coming back to them for any number of reasons we can speculate on. But why ever you do it is not so important as that you stop doing it, and that way you free up psychic space for the positive, for the euphoria, for when you receive recognition, when you receive encouragement, when you receive the kind of positive energy that we know is so important, that it'll be able to get in. Because a lot of times folks with VAST, or what most people call ADHD, are almost impervious to positive feedback because they're so stuck in these negative pools, and so you want to make yourself able to receive love, to receive praise, to receive encouragement, and not have these barriers up that can be terribly, terribly, terribly hard to manage, and really a true impediment to growth and development. So it's not just a matter of feeling good. It's a matter of making yourself able to be built up by the nourishment of encouragement and praise, what we're saying, calling recognition responsive euphoria. But to make yourself ready to receive that, you really need to get rid of the leeches in your life, get rid of the people or projects that are just bringing you down, disappointing you, and chronically frustrating you.
Right, and it's like there's this tremendous energy for people with VAS that needs to be guided, if you will, away from the getting into the dysphoria or feeling horrible about yourself, to see all the energy and the positive use of it, and with the encouragement or the right direction, it can really go and do such creative things. So, next slide, please. As mentioned, William Dodson described this syndrome, Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria, and listed all the different characteristics there, but it's really amazing. I had a patient who was stuck into his RSD, and just by saying, "Oh, you have Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria," it was like, "Oh, other people do too?" To let them know that he's not alone, and just by naming it, it was quite phenomenal to him to recalibrate and say, "Okay, this is part of my ADD." I let myself drop into this horrible state, and he would do it all the time, and had become accustomed to it. So he sort of retreated from the world more than he should have, and because he was afraid of just dropping into this negative space. And by naming it, it just caused a reorientation to what possibilities life could hold for him, and then helped him out even further by using one of our medicines that 10X or guanfacine or Intunib, whatever your choice is, but this helped, as Dr. Dodson sort of defined for us, it helped reduce this dropping into the horrible state of feeling bad. And in our new book, we talk about the new, next slide please, the new way of understanding ADHD by looking at brain networks. And this is a whole new way of understanding how our brain really works, that it's not just this part and that part, but these parts working together. And one of the major ones is called the default mode network. When you,
if I can just interrupt you for a second, John, the one of the, just to pick up on what you said about naming it, one of the real advantages once you name something, for a lot of people, just naming ADHD, or what we now call VAST, is the primary therapy once there's a name for it. Because once you can name it, then you put it outside of yourself. You put it at arm's length. Instead of it being owning you and you're merged with it, you're defined by it, you take it outside of yourself, you put it at arm's length, and then you stop mistaking it for reality. See, a lot of times when people get in the grip of the rejection sensitive dysphoria, they think what they're perceiving is real. But when you name it, you say, oh, it's just my RSD distorting reality. The reality is not that. That's my RSD distorting it. And then you can say, oh, okay, so you mean I'm not a total schmuck. I'm not a complete loser. I'm not just a nothing. And then with that, you can feel a resurgence of energy. And so John was about to explain to you what the default mode network is, because that's what's going on when you fall into the grip of the RSD. Why don't you take it away on that, John?
Sure. The default mode network is a primary network in our brains, and it involves a front and back part of our brain, and they work together. And this is something that was discovered when people got into the scanners to look at the fMRIs, to look at their brains, and when you enter into these scanners, you're told to just relax and think about nothing, let your mind wander. And while mind wandering had this signature, parts of the brain that were always active when you let your mind wander. And you think about it, this is where ADD people are a lot. Their minds are wandering, and if not focused, which is another network, that task performance network, which activates the frontal cortex and the executive function and all that, which ADD people have such a hard time staying in, because there's this magnet to get back into the mind wandering part. And when you do that, there's a problem sometimes when you are too used to it, and especially if you're feeling bad about yourself, you can get into ruminations, and you can fall into this RSD kind of thing that you go over and over and over, where how bad you are, and if you have a name or if you have some encouragement out there, you can flip that around. So we really think that, next slide please, that we can change the RSD into the RRE. And Ned, do you want to talk a bit more about the RRE?
Sure. I've just been observing so many times over the many years I've been working with people who have VAST, not to mention my own self, that while, yes, the RSD is real, its opposite is real. So once you start thinking, wherever there's one quality in VAST, its opposite is not far away. So I just took the words rejection sensitive dysphoria and turned them on their head. So if there's a rejection sensitive dysphoria, then there must be a recognition responsive euphoria. And sure enough, there is. And folks with VAST, or what most people call ADHD, tend to get very little of the kind of encouragement, stroking, praise that they need, because very often they're screwing up, they're making mistakes, they're disappointing themselves and others, and so they're very accustomed to the negative side of it. But when you give them a little bit of encouragement, when you give them, that and we can all cite the teacher, the coach, the parent, the grandparent, whoever, that moment when they came upon us and gave us the encouraging word, you take that and you just run with it. You just expand it, and it's exponential. And so we now really encourage all people, adults, children alike, find something and encourage it. Find a creative outlet. We folks with VAST really need a creative outlet, and the reason I write so many books, if I don't have a book going, I get depressed. And someone else may be a gardener, someone else may be a serial entrepreneur. That's why they keep starting businesses. If they don't have a business they're starting, they get depressed. So, find whatever your creative outlet is. In the book, we call it the right difficult. Find the right difficult, and then jump into it. And then if you are close to one of these people, give encouragement. Don't be a dream maker, not a dream breaker, as my friend John Croyle always said. Be a dream maker, not a dream breaker. And if and it's the voices of realism and all that are dream makers. Well, feed the unrealism. That's where great achievement comes from. It comes from being unrealistic. And so, you don't want someone to throw away everything on one roll of the dice, but you do want to give them encouragement to their dreams. And when you do that, they will make really good use of it because that's just as we can amplify. We're amplifiers at heart. We amplify everything. We intensify. So just as we can amplify rejection, we can also amplify recognition. So give a little recognition and watch it get amplified and get turned into a sonic boom, get turned into something spectacular. Just as we can turn a tidbit of rejection into a sonic boom in the negative direction, So be aware that, that the negative drumbeat, which these folks often hear, does a lot of damage. But as damaging as that can be, the positive trumpet sound, the sound Gabriel's horn, and you'll get a wonderful a wonderful result of positive energy.
Ned and I have been talking about this, the positive side of ADHD are now vast for many years, ever since we wrote Driven to Distraction. And we've been taken to task by the hardliners, we call them, people that say, okay, no, it's got to be a disorder and it's got to have these characteristics, and no, people with vast can't really be successful, which is garbage, because so many of the most successful people that I see and the Ned have seen over the years have vast and just need the encouragement or the change in orientation or a little bit of medicine for a while. And not even that, just to know that they have some of the problems of vast, which is, some of the stigmata of ADHD. They have a hard time sustaining their attention, and they need support and help to sustain attention. They need a planner and a closer, which is ideal if they can get that to support them and to encourage them. And I think what RRE is really saying, look, there's ways of doing this. There's situations, there's setups that you can get to encourage your bliss, if you will. Next slide, please. And it's the same possibility of dropping into the default mode network, where Ned calls it the demon of the default mode, or the massive motivator, master motivator of this powerful part of our brain to help us move into new territories and stay with it and have this positive regard for what we're doing, what life's about, and where we're going with it. So that, and we know that criticism or praise can get you into this default mode, get you stuck there. But if it's praise, it will help you get out of it, to get busy on things that are meaningful to you and to others. And this is where we want to move the whole field, to sort of appreciate that we have to help create these stellar environments. In our book, there's a whole chapter on the stellar environments, which is about getting yourself around, surrounding yourself with positive thinking people that are there to help you remain positive and stay with your dream. Ned?
Yeah, no, it's, you can spend an awful lot of time dissecting the negative, which I think psychiatry in general spends much too much time doing, and not nearly enough time pumping up the positive. And, you build a lifetime not on remediated weaknesses, but on developed strengths. Now, for sure, in order to develop some strengths, you have to remediate some weaknesses. So it's not either or, but it's a shift in emphasis that I think the whole field of psychiatry needs, but particularly when it comes to working with people who have VAS, that you want to pump energy into wherever the talents lie and grow those talents, grow those interests, grow that skill, talent, whatever it might happen to be. And then, another analogy I use is, vast is like Niagara Falls, and it's just a lot of noise and mist until you build a hydroelectric plant. And then you light up the state of New York. So, we're sort of in the hydroelectric plant business, helping people, find, what is their outlet, what is their creative outlet, what is their right difficult, what is their vision they want to pursue. And you have a real difficult time pursuing it without encouragement. But with encouragement, you can do it. My favorite group to point to are the people who colonized this country, and what a crazy scheme that was to get on a boat in 1600 and come over here. And, darn good chance you'd die en route. And when you got here, you had no idea what you were going to find. But they banded together. They encouraged each other with promises of riches and adventure and a whole new world. And, just the kind of thing that turns on people with vast. And if you look at the lives of those early colonists, it looks like, a whole crowd of people who have this condition. So we feed off of each other's energy, and we can galvanize that and turn us into a group of people who founded America. And so many businesses are started by someone with a crazy idea, and then next thing you know, it's not so crazy anymore. I can guarantee you, whoever invented the wheel had this condition.
Well, and the trick is try and remove shame from your life as much as possible. People with VAS are so used to shame and humiliation because they've tripped up, they've fallen, they've forgot, they've had all the problems of a race car brain with bicycle brakes, as Ned likes to say, and it's a perfect way of looking at it. And so the idea is to get that race car brain on track and keep it there. And the best way to do that is with encouragement. Next slide, please. Next, there we go. Okay, so just as a little kernel of failure and shame and humiliation and feeling bad about yourself can tumble into a real horrible feeling about yourself and gets wedded to your understanding of who you are. So too can a little kernel of hope and motivation can take you to the heights. And one of the things that is important is to try and create those environments or instruct people in your environments, your parents or your spouses or your work force, to be encouraging rather than just pointing out your foibles and your failures, to help you move forward and on to the great things that you really want to do and accomplish. We know that the ADHD people or VAS people are resilient because they've had to be. They've, fallen off the horse many times and have to get back up on it. So they're used to it, they're expecting it, and they've had this incredible capacity to push forward. So we have to use that to help them modify their lives by going for the positive. Now, do you want to finish up here, or we're about ready?
No, we should probably get on to the next slide.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Praise instills hope. And I just was sort of talking about that.
You did that one. Is that the last slide, Lily?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's the last slide. Oh, okay. All right. So let me, just, I guess summarizing, that we've been presenting our new term for ADHD, namely variable attention stimulus trait, or VAST, with an emphasis on it being a trait, not a disorder. Yes, it can be a disorder, but it can also be a tremendous asset in your life. Just look at the legion of entrepreneurs who have it. Look at the legion of unbelievably successful people who have it: inventors, creators, artists, actors, Nobel Prize winner, you name the field, someone at the top has it. It does a tremendous disservice to classify it entirely as a disorder, because then we create a disorder by doing that. And the disorder of shame and fear and believing that you're stupid and thinking that you can't do things instead of that you can do things. I have ADHD and dyslexia, and I wouldn't trade either one for the world, because they're embedded in them are my special talents. So the challenge, which makes this work so fascinating and wonderful, is to how to extract the best stuff and minimize the bad stuff. And that's fortunately a very doable undertaking with the many tools we now have in our toolbox. And some new tools that we're putting in our new book, as well as some old tools, the chief among them being education, just learning what it is and how to name it, how to describe it, and then most of all, how to manage it, and how to, the alchemy of it all, turning something negative into something positive. But this is practical alchemy that works. And, the reason I love going to work every day is I just see the tremendous progress people make, and the bravery, a lot of them who've not even known what was going on, and they discover it at age 30, 40, 50, 60. My oldest patient was 86, and he was finally able to write the book he'd wanted to write his whole life long. So it's never too late to lay claim to the treasures, to bring out the best, and it begins with hope, and then somebody helping you figure out how to do it. And one size does not fit all. For some people, medication; for other people, simply finding the right job, or marrying, or living with the right person. Other people, an exercise program. Other people, a meditation program. Other people find various nutritional supplements and diets can be very helpful, or all of the above. It's whatever works, as long as it's safe and it's legal. That's the goal, but always in an envelope of what I call connection, an envelope of positive energy, an envelope of at its most intense, it's called love, and as it spreads out and attenuates a little bit, it's called connection, and that's really what drives the positive. But we wanted to accentuate today the sort of the flip side of rejection sensitive dysphoria, which has had a lot of press, and say, look at its counterpart, recognition responsive euphoria, which is a positive tool, as opposed to a pitfall, which is what RSD is. Recognition responsive euphoria is a tool you can use. Just give encouragement, give praise, or seek encouragement and seek praise, and eschew, stay away from, abandon the vultures and the leeches and the negatives, the people who want to tear you down. There are too many of them out there, and just don't give them your attention. Don't feed them with your attention. Go for the encouragers, the people who are looking toward your dream right along with you. Shall we start there, John, and do some questions?
Sure. Thank you both. Your listeners are thanking you. One person just typed clap, 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 repeat, and another one thanks both of you for Delivered from Distraction, which helped them enormously. So lots of positive comments here. They're asking if we can put the slide back that defines VAST, which probably would be helpful. Let's see, Lily.
Sure, yeah.
There it is. Yeah, that's helpful. And one person asks, so what are the chances that the medical community will accept this definition and replace ADHD with VAST?
I would say zero, but but that doesn't mean the casual, the everyday person like you and me can't do that. I mean,
Exactly.
I think we'll retain ADHD as a research definition, so research can be done from that definition. But I think, the average person could replace it today.
Right.
Get rid of ADHD and say, no, instead you have vast variable attention stimulus trait.
Yeah.
When you talk to people about ADHD, so many people sign on and say, oh, yeah, that's me. But they really don't have the disorder yet, or don't have a disorder, but they have some of the symptoms, and it's oftentimes is this variable attention stimulus seeking trait that people have, and it gets in their way, but it also leads to massive achievement and lots of good times. So that's what we want to promote.
That's right. So Erica says, a listener says, I've gotten to the point where I tell my managers and family that I need gold stars for a job well done. Is that a good way to manage the need for recognition? I think a lot of people have a hard time asking for help, for praise, and looking for praise, especially when they're so sensitive to rejection.
Yeah, because of pride and because of our culture, says you shouldn't need it once you're over X years old. Well, that's total nonsense. There's nobody in the world who doesn't need encouragement. And, so if you have to just come right out and ask for it, I mean, I asked John all the time when I was writing this book. I said, John, you need to encourage me, please. You need to encourage me. Because John doesn't do it easily. He was brought up in such a way that he sort of plays it close to the vest. But I say, John, I need encouragement. And so he calls me up and says, okay, Ned, go for it. You can do it. And it really helps, So if you have to be brazen about it, go ahead, you do whatever you need to do. There's no, the only thing that's not good is when you pretend you don't need it. So however you ask for it, and then you get it. And I think she's great that she can say, I need gold stars. Good for her. And maybe the manager will take a lesson and realize everyone needs gold stars.
I think that's so unusual that somebody sort of does that, because it's what they need. It's what they need, and recognizing that and then putting it in play is so difficult in our world today.
Someone here mentions that in many schools, teachers are reluctant to praise because they feel that motivation should be intrinsic. And we know that motivation is a big issue for people with VAST. As a parent, and she's asking, as a parent of a child with VAST, how would you suggest approaching the need for praise in the school setting?
Yeah, this intrinsic motivation stuff, it's a buzzword, and you're supposed to have it be intrinsic. Well, supposed doesn't matter. And, motivation usually begins extrinsically. You want love, so you do what the other person wants you to do to get that love. You want a good grade, so you study something you could care less about to get a good grade. You want to get your allowance. You want to, they're all forms of bribes, if you will. Any expert who says you shouldn't bribe children doesn't have children. You can't raise a child without bribes, incentives, extrinsic motivation. Over time, when you find something you really like to do, then the motivation becomes intrinsic. Like, I now really like to write. But believe me, when I started off, I was writing because I was assigned it, and I wanted to get a good grade, so I wrote. So it almost invariably begins with extrinsic motivation. And then once you find something you really like to do, whether it's playing tennis or writing or hopscotch, it becomes intrinsic. But to set that as a goal and say, well, you should be intrinsically motivated is stupid. I mean, it flies in the face of reality. And so let's recognize reality, provide extrinsic motivation, and then once the child or the adult finds something they really like to do, they'll keep doing it because they want to, i.e. intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what that person can do is in their parent-teacher meeting is sort of describe what would be most helpful in terms of getting the most out of the child, and saying, look, this is something that she needs to remain focused and on track, by saying, look, you're doing well, but you got to, and we want you to continue, and that's great. So you say you have to shape your environment as well as yourself. And, one of the things that journaling does for a person is to remind them of the positive, not the negative, the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the positive when you're putting it down so that you can return back to it, and that can remind you and stimulate you even further.
Great. Here's a thank you to both of you so much for reframing the language of vast. I can't possibly describe how much this means to me. So that's from Amanda. Just a comment there. Here's a good question. I think it's kind of the downside of the opposite side of this positive reinforcement. From the person who is able to ask for it, how do you help someone be able to receive positive reinforcement and praise? Both my son and my husband are very quick to listen to and believe negative comments and seem to be impervious to the positive ones. So this maybe part of your shame concept. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on having difficulty accepting positive comments.
Well, again, it's sort of an education process. It's pointing out we're generally set up not to search for that, not to ask for that, not to and especially the male wanting to be tough and sort of self-contained. But so that has to be pointed out. Say it's hard for you to accept this, and that should be something you might try to think about and work on, and then to try it and see whether they can, feel the positive.
Okay. Let's see. What if the task, this is from Michael, what if the task is truly impossible? Does the praise have to connect with actual reality?
It does have to connect with reality, but you can say you're trying what seems impossible. And the best example from my life happened in 12th grade when I went to Exeter, which is a very rigorous boarding school up in New Hampshire, and my 12th grade teacher handed me back a 3-page story I'd written in September, and written at the bottom, I can still see it today in red ink, was the simple question, why don't you turn this into a novel? And I thought to myself, holy moly, I knew Exeter was a tough school. I didn't know I had to write a novel. But I was the only kid he said that to. And so I took it as sort of a praise, not to mention a challenge. And so I undertook to do it. And he said, this is not an assignment. You'll have to do it on your own time. And if you'd asked me in September what the chances are I could write a novel, I would have said none, impossible, fly to the moon more easily. But I took it on because I really cared about Mr. Tremolo was his name, and I wanted to please him. And again, we come back to intrinsic versus extrinsic. And so I gave it a go, and one page led to another. And by the end of the year, gosh darn it, I'd written a novel. It won the Senior English Prize. But more than that,
wow.
it got me to prove to myself that I could do the impossible or the seeming impossible. And once you've proved that to yourself once, you want to keep doing it. The rest of my life, I've been trying to do the impossible, usually failing. But it's not a matter of success and failure. You soon come to discover, but staying in the game. And you learn the truth of that Kipling phrase, if you can look at triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. What matters is staying in the game. And my writing that novel introduced me to staying in the game of life and wanting to, loving it. The game of writing, there are very few games that are more unforgiving than the game of writing. But thanks to that man, and thanks to that experience of having done what I would have thought was impossible, my life changed forever. So particularly early on in life, if you can be a teacher, a coach, a parent, whoever, who sets goals that are way higher than seem, quote unquote, realistic, a term I hate, you might just work that magic that Mr. Tremolo worked for me.
That's an extraordinary story, Dr. Hallowell, because it was really just one phrase that he wrote that set off an entire direction for you.
Exactly.
So it shows the power of praise. is there any medical explanation? We have 3 or 4 questions around this issue. That is do we have any understanding of why the emotional swings of ADHD, both the positive and the negative? Do we understand, medically what is going on with this?
You mean neurologically? What?
Neurologically. Yeah. What? Well, I think everybody who hears it recognizes immediately that identifies with these traits and feels a sense of relief that this is something, outside themselves. But I think we cast about to understand it.
I think we're beginning to get there in terms of trying to understand what networks are involved and all that, but it still comes down to there's this tendency for these swings in the ADD person, and that's why it often gets confused with the bipolar patient and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like it. One day you're high as a kite, and the next day you're down in the dumps, and really down in the dumps, and so or really high as a kite, and then you can do that, and you can swing within a day or within an hour. You get some encouragement, and you'll be swinging. You get some bad news, and you'll be down in the dumps, and really down in the dumps. And it's a matter of learning to put those brakes on. That's the real challenge for someone with VAS, so that they maintain at least a somewhat equilibrium outlook and allow themselves to get into the positive and put the brakes on the negative.
Okay. Just the last question on this issue. Can this emotional sensitivity, both the RSD and the euphoria, be seen in a brain scan?
Well, the RSD you can. I mean, one can in the fMRI. You can see what lights up with the rumination. The people that get really into being really down, that they're horrible. Yeah. There's areas of the brain that off of the default mode network, you can see this sort of charged up kind of thing. Now, people, by the way, it shows you where we're at. People haven't taken up looking at something like euphoria, the recognition, mild euphoria. They haven't looked at that yet from the fMRI perspective, but we do see that, and well known for the people that get horribly dysphoric and depressed, and they go round and round and round, and they can't get out of it. So we do see that signature in the fMRI kind of scans.
Interesting. Okay. There's a parent here who says, how do we know if we're experiencing this dysphoria and euphoria of ADHD or a VAS and not bipolar disease? My son was previously diagnosed with ADHD, but more recently his doctor is wondering whether perhaps he has bipolar disorder because he has exactly the dysphoria and euphoria that you're talking about.
But that's a matter of degree, oftentimes.
Okay.
And so, it's like you get stuck in something and then you can't get out of it. Especially, usually the real diagnosis of bipolar comes about when you get stuck in the mania, when you get stuck in the euphoria and you can't get out of it, and you lose sleep, and there's a whole bunch of things that really say, okay, well, maybe this really is bipolar, but too often.
And remember, there's a difference, if I can interrupt, there's a big difference between euphoria and mania. Mania is a crazed state where you're talking fast, you're grandiose, you're, as John said, losing sleep, you're spending money wildly, your judgment is severely impaired. That's not euphoria. Euphoria is just feeling really good, like we were describing. Someone gives you some praise, you think, wow, that's great. I feel charged up. I'm motivated. You don't lose your judgment. You don't become manic. You don't become crazed. So mania is a pathological state, whereas euphoria is a wonderful state. You can't stay in it very long, but it's a transient but blissful state that motivates you and can sustain you for a long time.
Right, and I think the book, The Bipolar Child, identified this too much, and so we have many people who with VAST who get labeled as perhaps bipolar because they get euphoric and they want to become Superman, or they want to become this one gal wanted to be. She said she's going to skate so hard so that she can get on the Olympic team. Well, that was seen as being unreasonable, but it was not. She was just excited about doing it, but to put a manic label on it is a problem. I mean, and so you really have to have, like Ned said, you have to get way flipped into something that lasts for days, and then you can begin to really say, okay, maybe this is bipolar.
Right. Okay. So this person whose child is having euphoria and so forth may need more of a workup to go down the bipolar road, the road that just that description possibly from what you're saying. An interesting question. You both mentioned that ADHD or VAST comes with both, highlights and deficits. Does ADHD medication dim both the pros and the cons of the condition?
No. Not if it's used properly. If it's used properly, it changes you as much as and no more than eyeglasses. Eyeglasses don't make you smarter or stupider, but they do allow you to use your smarts and your creativity more effectively. And that's what medication does when it's used properly. If it should happen to take away your special sauce, your creativity, then you stop it. I mean, it's very simple. People overlook the obvious. If the meds do anything that you don't like, you stop the meds. If you turn purple, you stop the meds. I've never seen that, but I suppose it could happen. But anything these meds do is transient, good or bad. And if it's bad, you stop the meds, or you change the dose, or you change the medication. Remember, medication is not surgery. It's not permanent. It's transient, lasts a matter of hours. And so if you took it and you became less creative, don't take it again. But what happens most of the time is you become better able to use structure, direct your creativity.
Yeah, and it can't be emphasized enough that it's one medicine that can cause this. It can cause the dimming, but if you switch to another medicine, it may not do that. And so you have to search around and not be wedded to, it's all medicine is going to do that, because it may not. You have to search for it sometimes.
Right. I think that's something we hear often at Attitude, sort of a generic, instead of realizing there are literally 30 or 40 options in medication, finding the right one, just assuming that whatever the reaction is that's it, definitive. So, okay, let's see. This is from Jeff. I've just been diagnosed at 59, and I'm ending a 23-year negative looping cycle. The seminar has answered so many questions of personal doubt. Thank you. So I guess I will end with that. I think that you have done an extraordinary service to our listeners, both of you, by pointing out that there is an upside to ADHD, and we're both grateful for all your work for both of you over the years. I think you have shed great light upon what I'll call VAST for the time being.
Thank you, Susan, for the work you do and Attitude does. It's a tremendous magazine and a tremendous service you guys provide.
Thank you. Thank you.
We get all this praise, we might get manic. I don't know. No.
Well, next week I just want to point out that after Thanksgiving on December 4th, we have a Get the Year Back on Track. If you're school first parents of kids who, are just getting the school year, sort of seeing how the school year is going and thinking about what the daily challenges are. And then on Tuesday, December 10, and the ADHD anxiety link. So, and especially you focus on mindfulness, which I think is of interest to a great deal of our listeners. And with that, I'm going to sign off, wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks again to Dr. Ratey and Dr. Hallowell. You guys are the best. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.